Welcome back to another video, and today we got our Week 9 college football top 25 rankings where we're coming out with these every single Tuesday night, so make sure you subscribe if you're new. Turn on the noties to make sure you don't miss whenever we upload one of these videos. We also have NFL weekly picks every Wednesday. We just dropped our NBA season predictions yesterday, though we'll have NBA videos every Thursday moving forward, and then obviously college basketball, and that starts. We're a huge college basketball channel. We'll be having those videos coming out every Monday. We'll preview every single conference. All the big conferences. So the college basketball content will be coming very, very soon. And we also do MLB as well. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go on there, hit that subscribe button. Links in the description as always. X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Follow those, join those if you would like to. With all that being said, though, let's get into our number 25 team. And the team I have ranked at number 25 is going to be Army. Army gets into the top 25. I don't think anybody expected this from this season, at least. And Navy is actually also Army and Navy have been ranked in the AP poll for 2 weeks now. They were ranked last week, and they continue to be ranked this week because they both won. I don't have Navy. I'm going to say it right now. I don't have Navy ranked quite yet. I kind of want to see what happens against Notre Dame because they are playing Notre Dame. But Army, I do believe, deserves to be ranked. I mean, you look at the point totals. Their worst game. The worst game on here is 24-7 on the road against FAU. Now I know they really haven't played anyone. We'll kind of figure out how legit, I guess you could say, Army and Navy are because they both have to play Notre Dame. Navy's playing Notre Dame this week, and then Army will have them in the next couple weeks. They are on bye this week, so nothing to really touch on there. But good on them for getting in the top 25. Moving on though. To our number 24 team, we got three newly ranked teams to the top 25. Three teams that have not been ranked at all this year. And Washington State, I believe, deserves to be ranked at this point in the season. They're 6-1, only losses on the road against Boise State. And we know how good Boise State has looked. And you look at in the non-conference, they took down Texas Tech. Texas Tech, I believe, at this point in the season, that is their only loss still. I may be mistaken. No, they just lost to Baylor. But before last week, Texas Tech was 5-1. Only loss coming to Washington State. When looking at Washington State, they actually are putting together a really solid season so far. Now, obviously, they're not going to have much recognition because they're in the Pac-2. So they're not going to have any conference games. They're playing against Mountain West competition. And they did lose to Boise State, which was their really only hard game on the schedule, I guess you'd say. But win over Washington, Big Ten team. Win over Texas Tech, solid team as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish the season 11-1. They're actually a very, very good team. Last week, they take down Hawaii. Their quarterback threw for 300 yards almost, 3 touchdowns as well. This is a really good offense. I really like this Washington State team. I think the offense continues to roll this week against San Diego State. They're favored by 14. They're favored by 14.5, actually. I have them covering by quite a bit. I do think they will win this week. Moving on, though, to our number 23 team. It is going to be Syracuse. Now, I've been thinking about ranking Syracuse for quite some time. I think this is the perfect week to do it. USC falling off a cliff. Oklahoma as well. Michigan as well. Nebraska. All those teams I'd ranked. Actually, I did not have USC ranked last week, but the other three I did. USC was right there. But all those teams losing last week really just opened up this bottom end of the rankings. So I think Syracuse at this point deserves to be ranked. They're 5-1, only lost to Stanford. If you take away that loss, I mean, look at the resume. Georgia Tech, pretty solid win there on the road against UNLV. UNLV was actually ranked at the time this game happened, and UNLV is only a 3-point underdog to Boise State this week. That's going to be a huge game. We'll get to that in a little bit. They also have a road win against NC State. I think we're going to really find out how legit the Syracuse team is. They go on the road to Pitt. It's a weird Thursday game. I could definitely see Syracuse coming out on top. This is a really 50-50 game to me. I think this could go either way. Kyle McCord is top 10 in the Heisman voting right now. He's putting together a really good season. Syracuse bringing in a lot of transfers in the offseason, and so far it's been pretty successful. But on the road against Pitt, Pitt has looked so good. They haven't lost yet. I think I'm going to go Pitt. Now, I originally was thinking Pitt all the way, and then right before I hit record, I switched it to Syracuse to win. Ultimately, I think Pitt wins. These two teams are pretty evenly matched. I like Kyle McCord, but I don't know. I mean, it's a weird Thursday game. I feel like I gotta go with the home team, but then again, that also makes me think it's a weird game situation. Syracuse could come out there and win. I really don't know. This game could go either way. I'm just gonna side with the home team and the undefeated team, but I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse goes out there and wins Thursday night. Moving on though, number 22, it's gonna be Missouri. Now these are kind of once we got past those bottom three, these are kind of the typical ranked teams we've seen this year, at least recently. Missouri falling down 3 spots after a comeback struggle win home against Auburn. I mean, what's going on? Missouri really disappointing to start out the season. I mean, close win over Boston College, close win over Vanderbilt, close win over Auburn. Obviously, the blowout loss against A&M. Nothing here is really making me think they beat Alabama this week. I know Alabama's looked awful, but Brady Cook last week threw for less than 200 yards. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. Luther Burden didn't really do all that much. I mean, he did lead the team in receptions, but only 49 yards. I don't know. This Missouri team just doesn't look all that impressive. I think Alabama needs a game like this, a statement win. They get it at home as well. I think Alabama goes out there and puts up the necessary amount of points. I don't think it's really going to be a low-scoring game. I think both these teams will want to score a little bit. I don't know. I'm still holding on hope that Missouri is still one of the better teams in the country. And I do think they are, but like when looking at these past 4 weeks, besides that, really looking at the past 5 weeks, I mean, just not impressive. I mean, now Missouri could very well still finish, assuming they lose to Alabama, they could still very well finish 10-2. I mean, this is a very light schedule, especially for an SEC schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 10-2. But does that get them in the playoffs with their best win being maybe Vanderbilt at home? Is that the best win? I mean, it probably is. I mean, unless you're saying Oklahoma's a better win or maybe Arkansas. It's not a great resume. Missouri, I'm saying this right now. If they want to get into the playoffs, this is a must-win game. We'll get to Alabama's playoffs, where they stand in a little bit once we get to them. But I don't think Missouri wins this game. It's on the road. Both these teams have been struggling. I still do believe Alabama is one of the best teams in the country. Missouri is a good team, but are they on the level of Alabama? Both these teams needing a win. I'm going to go with Alabama at home in that one. Number 21, I got Pitt staying where they were at last week, off bye. Felt no reason to move them up. Felt no reason to move them down. This week, like I said, I think they win against Syracuse, but this is a game that very well could go either way. I mean, I just have no idea. It's Thursday night. I mean, this is as weird of a game as it's going to get. Pitt is favored by 6. The over-under is telling me it's going to be around this range in scoring. I think they win because they're at home. I don't know, though. I mean, this is a really, really strange just game. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what to think about this game, in all honesty. And they also have SMU on the road next week, so it could potentially be a trap game. I'm going to go with Pitt. They're at home. They've looked really good, like I said, undefeated. But they have been squeaking by a little. Could this be the loss? I don't know. We're going to really find out what Pitt is made of here in the second half of their schedule. And look at this schedule. Syracuse, SMU, Clemson, Louisville, and then at Boston College. None of those games are really all that easy besides the Virginia game at home. So we'll see with Pitt. I'm going to say they win, but like I said, don't be shocked if Syracuse goes out there and wins. SMU, the other ACC team I have in the rankings, number 20, same thing. They do not move. They beat Stanford last week. Another great offensive showing from SMU. I think Kevin Jennings, another great game, 300-plus passing yards. They ran for 180 yards combined as a team. Just another great offensive showing for SMU. They've looked like one of the best offenses in the country. This week they got a 6-1 Duke team on the road. Duke's actually looking really good. They were a team I considered to rank. But then again, when looking at Duke, their schedule has been one of the easiest I've ever seen. They have a loss to Georgia Tech, and they just squeaked by Florida State. And we know how bad Florida State is. So, I'm going to go SMU. I think they show out here. But SMU, again, just we're going to really find out what they're made of in these next 2-3 weeks here with Duke, Pitt, and BC. I'm going to say SMU wins this one, though. Could be a closer game than my score prediction says, but I think they have a good chance to come through with that one. But Illinois up 5 spots after the very convincing win against Michigan. I think they deserve to bump up a little bit in the rankings. They're 6-1 at this point. Wins on the road against Nebraska, home against Michigan. I mean, their only loss is on the road against Penn State, who is ranked, third in the AP poll at this point? I mean, Illinois is looking really good. I mean, Illinois, if now we're going to get, I mean, is it realistic that they go into Oregon, who's ranked number 1 in the AP poll, and win? Ohio State couldn't do it. There's nothing really telling me Illinois can do it. I think Luke Altmaier has a solid game, but I think he turns the ball over a bit too much. I think Illinois' defense is good, but I don't think they're good enough to stop, Oregon on all their weapons. Jordan James, Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, Dylan Gabriel. I think Oregon, maybe Illinois can keep it close for maybe like the first half, but I think Oregon will end up winning by a considerable amount. They're favored by 21.5. I think that's a bit much, but I still do think Oregon wins. But looking at their schedule, there's a real possibility Illinois finishes 10-2. I mean, are any of these games besides the Oregon game losses? I mean, I think they beat Minnesota. I think they beat Michigan State. At Rutgers could be tough, and at Northwestern it is a rivalry game, but I think they would win. Honestly, I mean, there's a real chance Illinois finishes 10-2. I wouldn't be shocked if they did. Moving on, though, to our number 18, it's going to be Ole Miss, staying where they're at. They're coming off the bye, so no reason to move them. Coming off the loss against LSU, like Jackson Dart said in his post-game interview, they're going to have to win out. I don't think 3 losses gets you into the playoffs. Maybe it does one year, but not this year. There's just too many good teams at the top, and they still got a game against Georgia on the schedule. I mean, worst case scenario, I still do think I think they finish 9-3. But if they do end up losing to Georgia, which at this point I think they will, they'll have 3 losses in conference play. I don't know. I think they win against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been very disappointing. 4-3 at this point. I don't think Oklahoma ever touches the top 25 this year again. Ole Miss favored by 20. I don't have them winning by that much, but I mean Oklahoma's offense just looks abysmal. I think Ole Miss wins pretty handily though. Number 17 Boise State. No reason for them moving down specifically. Just teams I felt behind them one team specifically deserved to jump them. So that's kind of why they moved down. But when looking at this team, this is probably the 12 seed in the college football playoff. I mean, I don't think any other group of 5 team is really close right now. I guess Army and Navy, but those two will have to play each other at some point, whether it's in the conference championship game or the Army-Navy game or both. There could be a real chance where they just beat each other and then the next week the other team wins. I could see that happening. I think Boise State is a safe bet right now to get in, but they are going to need to win this week. That's for sure. It's a Friday game. We know what happens on the Friday games. Weird stuff happens. It's on the road as well against a UNLV team who is 6-1. Apologize. Didn't mean to click back there. They're only favored by 3 points. This could definitely be a game Boise State drops, and if they do, their playoff chances are kind of in question. I mean, UNLV's only loss is to Syracuse in overtime, which I've ranked at this point. UNLV looks like a really good team. offensively, defensively. I'm going to take Boise State. I think Ashton Genty's a little bit too much down the stretch. But I do think it's going to be a very close game, and I wouldn't be shocked if UNLV pulls off the upset. Again, Friday night game, weird stuff happens. It's also on the road. But Boise State is coming off the bye. I think they figure it out. I think they find a way to win in this trap game, I guess you could say. Not really a trap game, but just a game where it's definitely a losable game. I think Boise State goes out there, though, finds a way to win. And I think they take down UNLV 35-30. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if UNLV pulls off the upset. Moving on, though, to number 16, it's going to be Kansas State. Again, no reason for them specifically to move down. It's just kind of team behind them I felt deserved to jump in front of them. But when looking at Kansas State, they're one of the better teams in the Big 12. Probably still at this point the team I trust the most in the Big 12. I mean, you do have teams like Iowa State and BYU. But in my opinion, I still believe Kansas State is better than those two teams. But, I mean, I don't know. Those two teams are both undefeated. BYU did beat Kansas State. But Kansas State went into West Virginia and handled them. I thought they'd struggle a little bit. They took care of business. This week they got Kansas coming to town. It is a rivalry game, but Kansas just very disappointing season. A lot of people, and myself included, have them ranked inside the top 25 to start the year. Thought they could make a solid bowl game, win 8+ games. They're sitting at 2-5 right now, so very disappointing there. I think Kansas State wins. I think it's close-ish game for a while just because of the rivalry, but Kansas State, it helps. They get it at home. I think they win here. Number 15, we got to talk about this team. Indiana moves to 7-0, and I don't think anybody expected this. They go out there against Nebraska. Not only do they win 56-7 against a Nebraska team that I had ranked inside the top 25 for pretty much the entirety of this year. I mean, just wow. I mean, Curtis Rourke, talk about a out of nowhere team. He goes out there. I mean, he goes out there. I mean, he is one of the top contenders for Heisman I've seen. He's had an amazing season now. I know he got the injury. He is going to be out this week against Washington. But last week against Nebraska, Taven Jackson looked solid. I mean, he threw for 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. They didn't really need him to do much because they ran for 215 yards on the ground. I think Indiana wins this week. I think it's going to be a little bit of a close game. Washington did beat Michigan. But is that impressive at this point? I don't know. Look at the schedule. There's a real chance Indiana finishes. I mean, at this point, the floor for Indiana is probably 11-1. I said last week the floor is probably 10-2. But with Michigan dropping another game, I think the floor at this point's got to be 11-1 for Indiana. I mean, I don't see a loss besides on the road against Ohio State. I mean, every other game they're going to be favored. Hopefully the Curtis Rourke injury isn't, long-lasting. I think it probably won't be. I believe he hurt his finger. I think they win this week. I think it's close, but I think they get it done there. Kurt Cignetti doing a great job over with the Hoosiers. Number 14, huge playoff implications here with this game. Alabama dropping 8 spots. And yes, they did beat Georgia. That's going to be the talking point, and I feel like it's going to come down to it when we get the final 12 teams in the playoffs in that selection show. But if you really think about it, Alabama looked awful in the second half against Georgia. They did still end up winning. They looked bad against Vanderbilt. They didn't look good against South Carolina. I know they won, and they looked pretty bad against Tennessee. So that's now 3.5 games in a row where they've looked lackluster or bad. Home game against Missouri. This is a must-win game, and I think when looking at Alabama, they probably need to win out. If they have 3 losses, finish 9-3 on the year, I don't think they get into the playoffs. Now, the game I'm talking about that they may lose is on the road against LSU. If that's a night game, LSU has a real chance to knock Alabama out of the playoffs. I mean, the alarm bells have got to be sounding in Tuscaloosa with Kalen DeBoer. Yes, they beat Georgia, but like I said, I mean, they looked bad in the second half. and then the 3 games following that huge win, they've lost 2 of them. They probably should have lost to South Carolina as well. I'm a little worried about Alabama. I think they win this week just because Missouri has not looked good at all, and this is a must-win game. I mean, every game from this point out is a must-win. But that at LSU game looks like a monster of a game for playoff implications, and LSU also plays a monster of a game this week for playoff implications as well. But yeah, with Alabama, you probably have to win out now at this point. No room for error, and they're in a really tough spot. They moved down 8 spots. Number 13, BYU, moving up 1 spot. They survive against Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon just out of nowhere remembered how to do Ollie Gordon things. I mean, he just came out in this game and just really returned to form. BYU hung on. They found a way to win. And honestly, that's what I've wanted to see from them. I mean, Oklahoma State ran all over them. 269 rushing yards for Oklahoma State. BYU as well ran for 255 yards. It was a very good showing for both teams. BYU comes out on top. And BYU, with that win, I feel like they kind of proved to me that they are a really good team. I mean, I thought that game would be close-ish. I did think BYU would win. But the way that game is going, it did not look like BYU would win that game. They went out, drove down the field late in the game, took the lead, and ended up holding on with 30-ish seconds left. But in this game on the road against UCF, UCF is favored by 1.5 points. They're coming off a huge, tiring physical game. It is on the road. UCF's not a bad team at all. I could see them losing. They have Utah on the road next week as well. Maybe a trap game here. I think they win. I think it's going to be a very close game. I hope they don't. I hope they win because I feel like it just makes the playoffs interesting. But yes, I mean, this is the prototypical trap game. I think they win just barely. I think they hold on. Surprising, though, that UCF is actually favored here. But moving on to our number 12 team, we have Iowa State. When looking at Iowa State, they're kind of similar with BYU. They come off a come-from-behind win against UCF. I really thought they were going to lose that game. They win 38-35. Rocco Beck saves the day with the go-ahead touchdown there late in the game. He threw for 274 yards. They ran for 256 as a team. 4 rushing touchdowns on the day. Rocco Beck, total of 350, 360 total yards. UCF's quarterback just really couldn't do anything passing-wise. Rushing-wise, he had a great game. R.J. Harvey and Ja'Cory Brown ran for 354 total yards. I mean, Iowa State just was getting it ran down their throat, and the fact that they were able to win that game, giving up 350 rushing yards, that I feel like that goes to show, similar to the BYU situation where they just, it looked like they was going to lose. There was nothing going for them. They found a way to win. That's what good teams do, so I like to see that for Iowa State. It makes me feel more confident about them. Iowa State definitely a tougher schedule down the road than BYU. They are on bye this week, which I think is good. They need a little bit of a break here, but they continue to roll. They're 7-0. Number 11, A&M. 6-1 on the year, undefeated in SEC play. Obviously, they shot down the rankings after the Week 1 loss. They struggled a little to start out SEC play, struggling with Florida, struggling with Bowling Green, and obviously struggling with Arkansas. But then they go out, blow out Missouri. They move way up. They did show some struggle here against Mississippi State. Connor Weigman did throw 2 picks, but it ultimately didn't matter. They did end up winning. They did start out losing the game. But besides that, they were winning for the whole game. It was 21-17 at halftime. The defense really came around on the second half, and they were up 31-17 for a good amount of this game. Mississippi State scored, and then Texas A&M just shut them down. They couldn't really get much going. But this week, game of the week here in College Station, A&M favored by 2.5 And the reason I say this is so big for playoff implications, whoever wins this game has a very good chance to get into the SEC championship game. Both these teams, these are the two undefeated teams left in the SEC, at least conference play-wise. There actually is no undefeated team left in the SEC, which I think is very, very interesting, at least in terms of overall record. But these are the two last teams with winless, campaigns in SEC play. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. I think the fact that A&M gets this at home is really the difference maker. If this was in Death Valley, I'd feel a whole lot better about taking LSU, and I still do think LSU is overall the slightly better team. With that being said, though, it's a night game at Kyle Field. Give me the Aggies to win here against LSU. Huge game. Do I trust Brian Kelly in huge games? Honestly, not too much. I think, like I said, I think LSU is the slightly better team here, but it's A&M at night. We saw what happened against Missouri when they came to College Station. I think LSU is in for a similar experience. I think it's a much closer game than in Missouri. I think LSU is much better than Missouri, but I think A&M gets it done over LSU, and they put themselves in a very interesting position where if they win this game, are they penciled in to make the playoff? I feel like they might be. Even if they lose against Texas, 10-2, A&M with only one loss in SEC play could arguably make the SEC championship game with only one loss in SEC play. I don't know. Texas A&M, with a win here, they put themselves in a very, very good position to make the 12-team playoff. Moving on, though, to our number 10 team. It is going to be the team that beat A&M. I feel like I have to keep them ahead. I know it was week 1, but, again, it was on the road. Notre Dame did go in there and win. And I feel like if you eliminate the Northern Illinois loss, I know you can't do that, but, like, the conversation about Notre Dame is so much different. I mean, they have a on the road A&M win that looks very good right now. They have a win over Louisville. Yes, it was close, but Louisville is a really good team. They just handled Georgia Tech in a game that I thought would be a little bit closer. Now, we are going to see Notre Dame here. This is kind of the bulk of their schedule here. Navy and Army both ranked teams now. That could be very interesting coming up. And then USC on the road to close out the season. Maybe not as interesting as it once was, but still a tough game. With Notre Dame, if they lose another game, they probably don't make the playoffs because their schedule is just very light. But if they win out, it's hard to leave out an 11-1 Notre Dame. Now, they could be fraudulent. Both win over A&M. I mean, I just feel like they have to get in. I think they win against Navy. I just think the lights are a little too bright for Navy here. Would I love to see them win? Yes, but do I think it's realistic? Not really. Notre Dame gets this one at home. It is a pretty big rivalry, but I think the Irish get it done here. At number 9, I do have Miami. This is going to be lower than most people have them ranked, and I'll give you a reason why. When looking at this Miami schedule, where's the win? I mean, what's the impressive game? I mean, their first 3 games of ACC play have been by 4 points, 1 point, and 7 points. I know Louisville's a good team, and it was on the road, so I'll give them that. That's a solid win. But none of these games, I mean, if they lose a game, do they make the college football playoff? Now, if they lose a regular season game and go on and beat a Clemson or whoever they play in the ACC championship game, it's looking like it's going to be Clemson. Then I think they probably get in as a 12-1 ACC champ. But if they drop a game, or if they lose to Clemson, do they get in? I really don't know. I feel like they might still, because Cam Ward is one of the favorites for Heisman. I think this week they handle Florida State. I think they need to. If they struggle with Florida State, Miami could continue to drop in my rankings. I'm not trying to be like the AP poll where I just set in stone until you lose. Like, if you're pulling off these struggle wins, I'm going to punish you a little bit. I already have them drop down a little. I didn't feel like I needed to drop them down anymore because the Louisville game was a tough game. It was on the road. They did win by 7, and they were leading for most of that game. I think they need to handle Florida State. I think they know that. I think they go out there and do just that. Florida State does only have one win on the season up until this point. But number 8, I have Clemson. I do believe Clemson is the best team in the ACC right now. Now, that could definitely change. Miami, I thought, would run away with the ACC at some point this year. Now, Clemson has brought me all the way back. Their offense continues to play well. Cade Klubnik is doing his thing over there. They get a nice win over Virginia. And they are on bye this week, so good for Clemson. Really impressive. Just come from behind. I mean, they got dominated by Georgia week 1, and then they have really brought their season back. So good on them. They're going to have Louisville at home coming out of the bye. I think the fact that they get this out of the bye is a huge advantage, and their really only tough game besides that is, I mean, at VT is always a tough game, but at Pitt as well. So these next 3 weeks will really determine where Clemson is at. And I think they probably most likely win all 3 of these next games. Moving on, though, to number 7, LSU. 6-1 undefeated in SEC play, and I've already given my prediction. I think Texas A&M wins. I think the fact that it's on the road is a little too much. If this was in Death Valley, I'd feel very confident about LSU winning. I do believe they are slightly the better team, but the home field advantage in college football, it is a night game. I mean, that's just a huge advantage. I mean, I can't really explain how big of a factor that really is. I mean, we've seen it. Oregon takes down Ohio State. I believe Ohio State's still the better team overall, but Oregon had it at home. I mean, Bama beat Georgia at home. I think if Georgia's the better team there, I feel like that's pretty clear. Tennessee beat Alabama. I mean, you could argue that Bama is still better. I don't know if I would say that at this point, but you can make the argument. But with LSU, the bulk of their season comes down to these next 2 weeks. I mean, at A&M and home versus Bama, that is just a brutal stretch. I mean, we knew this coming into the year that this was the 2-week stretch for them. They do have a bye sandwich in between, which I think is huge. But I think LSU does lose against A&M here. Moving on, though, to our number 6 team, it is going to be Tennessee moving up 4 spots after the home win over Alabama. And yes, this is a huge win. I mean, them going out and getting this, I didn't expect them to win. I thought Alabama would come out on top. I know it was in Knoxville, but good on Tennessee. I mean, they didn't even play their best game, which is kind of crazy to think about. Their offense looked pretty lackluster. Nico really got to clean up the turnovers. I mean, 1 pick. I don't know. He looks sloppy. He only completed about 50% of his passes. Threw for under 200 yards. They didn't really need him to do much, though. I mean, Dylan Sampson had a great game, 140 yards, 5 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. He had a great game. When looking at Alabama, though, it was really just the factor that Tennessee's defense looks elite. I mean, they have one of the best defenses in the country. They forced Milroe to throw 2 picks. Milroe looked bad. Tennessee's was really the example of bend, don't break. I mean, they let Milroe get down into the red zone, and they forced turnovers. They shut down the run game for Alabama. They Ryan Williams did still have 8 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown, but he dropped a lot of passes. Tennessee, great win. I was getting worried. I mean, struggle against Oklahoma, not quite, but a little bit of a struggle against Oklahoma. Loss against Arkansas, struggle against Florida. They go out and silence me and beat Bama. And when looking at the schedule, Tennessee's gotta be a lock for the playoffs. I mean, Kentucky, Mississippi State, UTEP, and at Vandy, I know they're ranked in the AP poll, but I'm not really worried that Tennessee's going to go out and lose that one. The only tough game, in my opinion, is at Georgia, which at this point is probably looking like a loss, but 10-2 Tennessee definitely gets in to the playoffs. They put themselves in a really good spot. That was a crucial win that they just picked up. And man, if they didn't lose to Arkansas, we would be looking at Tennessee as potentially the second, maybe even the first-ranked team in the country. I mean, top 3 for sure, in my opinion at least. This week, I believe they are on bye, so no game prediction there. Number 5, we got Penn State. They come off the bye after going to USC and winning. Now, this game doesn't look great anymore because USC did just lose again. I believe who did they just lose to? Was it Minnesota? That sounds about right. I know they just lost though again. No, they lost to Maryland. They lost to Minnesota. So USC is coming off of 3 straight losses, 4 of their last 5 games being losses. USC is now 3-4. So they've really taken a turn in the wrong direction. And I was praising them last week for being probably the best 3-loss team in the country. Now they're at 4 losses. I mean, they could still be considered, I guess, the best 4-loss team in the country, but that's really not a flex because we're only 7 weeks in. I mean, we're more than 7 weeks in, but we're really only 7 games in for a lot of these teams. This week, coming off the bye at Wisconsin, this could be a tough game. It is a night game. Wisconsin, not an easy team to play. They're 5-2. They're actually a pretty good team, and this is not an easy place to play as well. This could be a very interesting trap game because they got the home game against Ohio State next week. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think Penn State's defense shuts them down enough where they get it done, and I think Penn State's good enough to win. I'm a little bit lower on Penn State than the AP poll because, yes, they beat Illinois, yes, they beat USC, but those aren't, I mean, they really haven't been tested, and we'll definitely see that here next week with Ohio State coming to town. Number 4, I have Texas. Moving down 2 spots now. We got to talk about Texas because they lost to Georgia 30-15 and looked not great doing it. I will say Georgia did put up 30 points. Texas's defense looked very good, better than I thought they would play. They forced Beck to throw 3 interceptions. If you were sitting here telling me Carson Beck was going to throw 3 interceptions, there's no way in the world that I think Georgia would win by 15 points. I thought Texas would. If you told me Carson Beck would throw 3 picks in this game, I would probably think Texas won by 2-3 scores. They lose by 2 scores. The offense just looked sloppy. Quinn Ewers he didn't look ready. I mean, what was the score at halftime? 27-0. Now, 23-0. They looked a lot better in the second half. Quinn Ewers definitely did calm down. Interesting to see they bench him for a little bit for Arch Manning. I mean, Sarkisian said it was for him to calm down, but I'm not sure I like the call there. They did put him back in the game. But, I mean, there's a real chance if Arch goes in there and he starts throwing, dimes, he starts making plays. I mean, there's a real world where Texas has Arch Manning play out the rest of the season. Now, that didn't happen. Quinn Ewers did come back in, and he looked good when he came back in. It was just a little bit too little too late. Georgia hangs on and beats Texas on the road as well. Texas was at home in this game. Now they got Vanderbilt on the road, and we saw what happened last time Vanderbilt played a team that beat Georgia. They went out and beat Alabama, number 1 in the country. Do I think that happens to Texas? No, I think Texas comes out well prepared. I think they have a nice bounce-back game. They're favored by 18.5. I actually have Vanderbilt covering, but I do think Texas is good enough to win this game. When looking at Ohio State, they come off the bye, so they're going to sit tight here at 3. I think this is about the spot where I feel like they should be ranked at this point. I mean, the 1-point loss on the road against the number 1 team in the country, probably the best loss. I mean, this is the best loss you can possibly have. By 1 point on the road against number 1 in the country, that's literally the definition of the best loss possible. So there's that for Ohio State. I still do believe the defense is elite. I know they gave up 32 points to Oregon, but Oregon's a very good team. This week against Nebraska, Indiana just blew them out. I thought this would be a potential trap game for Ohio State with the Penn State road trip coming up next week. But with Nebraska, we just saw Indiana win 56-7 with their backup QB in for a lot of the game. I think Ohio State wins. I think it's not. I don't think they blow them out, but they have it at home. I think they should have no trouble whatsoever against the Cornhuskers. Looking at number 2, moving up 2 spots, you could argue they should be number 1 in the rankings. And yes, there is that argument, but they do have a loss, and the team I have at number 1, we all know who it is. It's Oregon. Do not have a loss. Georgia does have 2 top 10 wins, in my opinion, with Clemson and Texas, one being on the road, but they do have the loss to Alabama, who is outside of the top 10, at least right now. When looking at Georgia, I'm going to say that this Georgia-Texas game, both these teams look beatable. I don't think there's an unbeatable team in college football right now. Penn State looks beatable. They're undefeated. Oregon looks beatable. I mean, Ohio State should have arguably beaten them already. Texas just lost. I mean, Ohio State already has the loss. I don't think there's an unbeatable team this year in college football, which I think is great for the sport. I love the parity. But when looking at Georgia, I mean, the offense really didn't look all that impressive. The defense looked really good. They forced a whole lot of turnovers. They made Quinn Ewers panic. He did not look ready for the moment, which I think is probably good for Texas that they get that experience. Georgia's kind of already had that with the Alabama game on the road, so they kind of knew what to expect coming in here to Texas. And they did show out. Kirby Smart led them to a 2-score win. I will say in the second half, Texas did look a lot better. I think if this game is replayed, I think you see a closer game. I don't know if Texas necessarily wins, but I think it's definitely a way closer game than this game ended up being. But when looking at Georgia, the defense looks elite once again. Trevor Etienne had a very good game, 3 touchdowns on the ground. They really didn't have to do much offensively, though. The defense was forcing turnovers, putting them in prime positions to score, and the Texas defense did hold them to, nothing. I mean, they were holding them to field goals. They were turning them over as well. Like I said, Carson Beck threw 3 picks. He threw for 175 yards passing. Georgia looked beatable. They get the win on the road by 2 scores, which I'm not trying to hate on Georgia. This is a huge win, one of the best so far, arguably the best win we have seen so far. But I will say, I mean, the defense, I mean, the offense, I still have question marks about the offense and the playmakers. No more Brock Bowers, no more Ladd McConkey. They look a little bit thin at in the receiving core. Will that come back to bite them down the line? We will see. They're on bye this week, so no prediction here. Number 1 team, though, still got Oregon. I feel like it's got to be Oregon. They come out and in a game that I thought could be a hangover game, could be a potential trap game for them at Purdue. Purdue's known to upset ranked teams when they come to town. It was a weird Friday night game. Oregon goes in there, has no problem, handles them, shuts them out 34-0, their first shutout of the season. And when looking at Oregon, you could argue Georgia has a better resume, but I mean, I don't know. Oregon's got a win over Ohio State, a win over Boise State. Georgia has the win over Texas on the road and a win over Clemson, but they also have a loss to Alabama. As of right now, I think Oregon has the better resume just slightly. They are undefeated as well. I'm going to keep Oregon at 1. We're gonna see they're gonna have a chance to pick up another ranked win home against Illinois, and like I said earlier, I do think they do that. They're favored by 21.5. I have Illinois covering. I think it's a little bit closer because I don't think Oregon's gonna go out and score a million points. I mean, Illinois' defense is very good. I do have them scoring 37, which is quite a bit though. But I mean, you look at the point totals. Besides Week 1, they've scored over 30 in every single game against Ohio State's defense, which was supposedly the best defense in the country. They put up 32 points. I think Illinois' defense is slightly worse than Ohio State's. They get this at home, so no real worries for me for Oregon. I think they go out there and handle business over Illinois. Illinois is a good team, but when looking at Oregon, it's probably looking like a 12-0 regular season for them. We'll see who they get in the Big Ten championship game, whether it's Ohio State, Penn State, potentially Indiana making some noise. We'll see. There could be some chaos. It's probably most likely going to be Ohio State, but Ohio State does still have Penn State and Indiana on the schedule. Now, if Ohio State goes out and beats those two teams, then yes, it will be Ohio State, which I think is what is expected up to this point. but you never know. There could be some chaos. But when looking at Oregon, they're looking like a locked and loaded playoff team at this point. But that's going to do it for the Week 9 college football top 25 rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go down there, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Like I said, we do these videos every single Tuesday night, NFL predictions every single Wednesday night. And then we just dropped the NBA season prediction video yesterday. Make sure you go check those out. That will be popping up on the screen here. If it's not already, it will be popping up shortly. Links in the description as always. X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With all that being said, that's going to do it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys tomorrow with Week 8 NFL game picks.